just so you know what I'm talking about with the spacer for the power hammer, this is just a open top box that I made with ends of flat stock, and the sides are made out of angle, 1.5 inch angle. This is for a 25-pound little giant power hammer, mechanical power hammer. And you can see I cut off all of the side of that side of the angle except for this 1-inch strip in the center, so it doesn't interfere with the stock getting pounded on. And then I drilled it and tapped it, and then I have these sacrificial pieces of mild steel, like 1-inch square, and that's 1/4 inch flat, 1/4 inch by inch, and I have other strips of 1/4 inch by inch all drilled out so that I can put that on there, and the top head of the hammer hits that and won't go any closer than 1.25 inches to the bottom head, so I can make a perfect 1.25 inch billet. But I can also stack up 1/4, half, 3/4 inch, or I could put 1.5 inches, whatever thickness I want. And it comes out pretty closely. This came out, let's see, this came out, yeah, within a 1/16 of an inch. I mean, that's really fairly dead on. So I hit it a little too much on the end. I got a little taper on the end, but most of the length was right, boom, 1.25 inches. So simple, quick, just drops onto the bottom head of your little giant, and what went there? And does the job. A little more about these butter pats. I cut them at about a 30 degree angle, and then I put them on the belt sander at a 30-degree angle and cleaned off the faces where they're going to contact each other. Because cleanliness is what it's all about with a forge weld. You want no oxidation, nothing in between the faces. Little known fact, you can weld steel at room temperature if the faces are clean enough. If you take two pieces of mild steel this size and machine them off to a 1/10,000th of an inch either side, and then polish them, mirror polish, degrease them, put them one on top of the other on an anvil, hit them with an 8-pound sledge really hard, they will actually weld. I mean, you will never get them apart without a hacksaw, because the steel will actually cohere. The reason why we use heat is just to not have to machine everything down to a 1/10,000th and polish it in order to make it weld. The heat allows all this sort of miniature mountain range of irregularities to squish down into each other and cohere. And as long as you have nothing in between them to stop them, no oxidation, no dirt or anything like that, they will weld. So that's why it's really good to box a weld like this. It really keeps everything clean and in position. So that's the secret right there. Here's the stack of butter pats all clamped in place and ready for MIG welding. And I'm going to spare you the MIG welding because who cares about MIG welding, really? All right, so I've got the MIG welding done, and I have completely boxed in the butter pat billet makings, welded them, spot welded them, or a little bead weld, not bead, but point welded them to the bars, and then I got some of this 16 gauge scrap steel, and welded it on the sides and on the ends. And I left a little gap right there so that gases can come out, it won't inflate. or explode. And you may say, wow, those are some ugly MIG welds. And I would concur. They are uglier than yo mama. But let's face it, within 15 minutes, I'm going to be putting them in a forge at 2,000 degrees or so and heating them up and then beating the crap out of them with a power hammer and then cutting them off with a grinder disc and discarding them. So ask me if I care how ugly these welds are. Excuse me, do you care how ugly these welds are? No, in fact, I do not. Thank you for asking. And I also welded a half-inch bar in there as a handle, very convenient. So let's get to the forge and get working. Finished the welding heat, and that didn't work. You can see how it got a little bit of weld going on the edges there maybe, but really no. I think that what happened was that I had put a couple of pieces of hard fire brick in the bottom of the forge to protect the bottom of the forge from abrasion and flux, and that brick was not reflective. It was dark colored, and I think it absorbed enough heat that the thing just didn't quite heat up enough. So anyways, I'm putting that aside for the moment. I'm going to break these apart and re-polish them and try them again with a tuned up forge. But in the meantime, what I am working on is this. The remains of the billet, I am going to try to accordion process it, where you can see I drilled holes because you don't want a sharp break. You want a radius. When the steel is bending, you want a radius. And so 3/8 of an inch in from the edge and 3/8 of an inch from each other, I drill these holes. So I'll get 5/16 in thickness. And I'm going to spread that out and make it into a zigzag and then flatten out the zigzag and get a long piece. And if you consider this is about 1.5 inches to there, it's 1.5, 3, 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9, 10.5, 12. So maybe I should be able to get a foot of 5/16 out of that. And then I'm going to eventually forge it down to about 3/16. So, you know, maybe 18 inches of functional material out of that remains of the billet. So that's the plan. We shall see if my welds are good. Wish me luck. All right, now that I have this in somewhat of a flat bar, I'm going to go to the power hammer, put a thickness stop in it, and forge this down to about 1/4 inch. So. What I'm doing is I'm forging it, tapering the blade, tapering it all from one side, so that when I actually forge the bevel on it, it'll bend back the other way. So between the two, I'll have to do less straightening. You can see this is really starting to curve around this way. When I bevel on that side, it'll come back that way. I've started to establish where I want the tip to be, and then I'll start taking out that bulge and bringing this back through. I'm going to draw it down a little bit more, and I'm going to put it back on the power hammer with a thickness stop on it, and bring it down to 3/16 inch thick, which is going to be the final sort of back end of the blade thickness within a little bit. I might leave it at 1/4, but we'll see, we'll see. Now I'm going to thin out the back a little bit. I'm going to perform the dual purpose of straightening the blade out so that it's symmetrical. I don't want to thin it out too much because there are a couple of cold shuts in it, and I need to grind those out. But that's pretty good. That's within grinding range. This is the blade in its roughly final form, sanded to 120 grit. It's basically the proper shape. It's going to be this way on the side. I've ground it down, but left a 1/16 of an inch, about 65 thousandths on the cutting edge, so it doesn't do a warp on the edge when I harden it. And it's about the right thickness, maybe a little thicker than it should be on the back. So when I bring it down to high polish, it'll lose a little there. But the next thing I need to do, because I'm about to harden this, is I need to put a little bit of anti-scaling material on it. Now, there's commercial things out there, but I like marking chalk. This happens to be white marking chalk. Choose your favorite color. You wet your blade, dump a little chalk on it, and you make a paste. And if it's kind of thin and you can see through it, add some more. You want a kind of a thick clay sort of paste on there. And when that dries, it'll be enough of a surface to mostly prevent scaling. It's not as good as the super professional stuff, but it works. So you can see the kind of coating I get on, and that when I harden this, it will blast right off of there. This is a brittle surface. It's not a particularly durable surface, so you have to be kind of delicate with it. But it will keep the blade from scaling up reasonably well. There we go, like so. I'm not going to worry too much about the tang. That can scale up a bit, but there. Ta-da! This is my quenching setup. I've got a piece of 3-inch Schedule 40 pipe welded to a steel disc. That's my quenching container. That's filled with canola oil. I know you can buy all sorts of much better quenching oils that are officially quenching oils, but I don't like to inhale chemical fumes. So canola oil, it has a high flash point, which is good for quenching. I've got an induction hot plate. This actually has half a transformer in it. It actually heats up the steel itself. There's no flame, there's no resistance heat. It's nice because there's no open flame, there's nothing that can ignite the oil, and I can actually set it for a particular temperature. I've got a little thermometer set in a aluminum foil cover on the top here so that I can keep track of the oil temperature. What I want to do is get the oil up to about 120 to 150 degrees Fahrenheit, I don't know, 50 or so degrees centigrade, so that the oil is less viscous. It's more liquid and it will circulate around the blade better and cool the blade down faster. So that's the actual quenching setup. What I've got here is an old electric kiln, which was originally, I think, intended for pottery. And what I did was I modified it. I put an electrical box on the side of the normal control box. It was just an off and on switch. And I put an Auburn PID digital controller on it and a solid state relay that handles the big current with a heat sink on it. And so now I can digitally control, and I put a K1 style thermocouple, a heat sensor in the back end of it. So I can now control this to within a few degrees Fahrenheit. You can see I've set it for 1500. It's at 947, 46 right now. It's going to take a while to get up to temperature, but this is what I'm going to use to actually heat up the blade for its hardening, its quenching. And then I'm going to go to actually a toaster oven for the first snap tempering. The kiln is up to about 1490 degrees. My quenching oil, if you notice, I wrapped the quench tube in silica bats to give it a little insulation. It's up to about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, around 50 degrees Celsius. So the oil is suitably non-viscous. By the way, having an induction heater is nice because you can get one with a temperature control where it actually will try and reach a particular temperature. So I have it set on 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Very nice. I got my toaster oven here, which I'll be heating up to around 425 degrees Fahrenheit for the snap temper. Right after I quench it, I'm going to clean the oil off of it and put it in there and just get a beginning temper on it so it won't develop micro cracks. So it's showtime. So of course I'm going to put on my birth control. Birth control, yes. Hello, ladies. Ready? Ooh, that's toasty. Drop that right in there. And get the hell out. There. It dropped to 1360 degrees almost instantly. Wow. So we're going to soak that for about 10 minutes. It's still straight. Yay. Oh, we can see the pattern too. Wild. Got a little bit more. Yeah. All right. Into the oven for an hour. And we can turn this off. So the blade quenched properly without warping on the edge or the back or anywhere. Yay, fireworks and trumpet fanfare. Before it even reached room temperature, I popped it into the preheated 425 degree toaster oven. And it's going to spend about an hour in there, just getting a preliminary temper. Once it's done that, I'm going to put it in the now cooled down kiln, which is also set at 425, and give it another longer temper, maybe a couple of hours. So I think the most tricky part of this is over for the moment. Now it's another temper and a bunch of sanding and grinding. Now we get to the fun part, etching. I've got my blade here. I've got distilled water. I've got ferric chloride, 42 degrees Baum, whatever that means, but it's a concentration. I've got used toothbrush and water for brushing the blade off in between soaks. I've got my graduated cylinder, my 1 liter graduated cylinder. And I've got a Delrin rod and a piece of wire attached to the tang of the knife so that I can hang the knife at an appropriate height in the cylinder. Seeing as this is acidic, I also have my prostate health gloves because I enjoy having fingerprints, and of course the birth control because I like seeing things. So to begin with, you always pour acid into water, never water into acid. So I'm going to do a 4-to-1 solution. Some people do 3-to-1, 2-to-1, 4-to-1. The received wisdom I've gotten is that more dilute and longer soak time, a longer series of short soak times is the best way to do it. So we'll $800, roughly speaking. Doesn't pay to get too scientific. Come on. There we go. And doesn't that look nice? So that pretty much mixed itself. So we're going to put this in. We aren't. You're going to sit there watching. I'm going to put this in for about 4 minutes and then take it out, scrub it, 4 minutes, take it out, scrub it, 4 minutes. One thing to be sure of, do not touch the blade after you have degreased it because you will get fingerprints on it. There we go. And I will wrap that around, and I can see everything swirling around it already. There we go. I can already see some pattern coming out. All right, I'm going to cut away and come back in a few minutes. All right, it's been 4 minutes, so I am going to take this out and give it a scrub. The point being that the oxidation on the steel, the 1095, I can see it coming off in the water, it acts as a resist. So if you don't take that off, it'll actually slow down or stop the action of the acid in that portion. So you could get almost a negative, you could lose your pattern as fast as you were gaining it, because stainless steel is not, it's stain resistant, not stainless. It's corrosion resistant, not utterly corrosion proof. So it could start etching a bit as well, and you'd be losing your pattern as you got it. So there you can see the beginnings of the pattern coming out there. I am going to put it back in and keep going, but I'm going to spare you the multiple instances of me pulling it out and scrubbing it and putting it back in again. So well, it's done, or as done as anything is. I may yet try the instant coffee trick on it to darken up the dark spots. But what I did was, after etching it and neutralizing it in ammonia or ammonia water mix, I then made myself a strop by just gluing some leather, some smooth-sided leather, to a piece of 2x, rubbing it with jeweler's rouge, and then polishing off the tops, because it actually has texture that you can catch with your fingernail. So anyways, this is the played blade, played being the Scots dialect version of plaid, the original, which, or our pronunciation of plaid being the American dialect version of played. So anyways, I'm going to step around behind the camera and bring this up close so you can get a better look at what this is. So I have to admit that this is in no way the pattern that I originally thought would show up on this, but still, and yet, it's kind of cool. I like it. You can see the stretched out parts, which was where I cut and folded it. And then on the other side, they're here and here. So you can see where the zigzag happened. Anyways, so there's the played blade. Not a bad first try, I'd say.